Holy crap. Look at all you guys. You people in the right room, either I'm in the wrong place or you're in the wrong place. Thank you for coming to hear me talk. My name is Pete Hines from Bethesda. This is my first time in Melbourne. Beautiful city. Thank you very much to Robert and Jerry and Mike for asking me to do this. I've known those guys for a long time. And I am not a dev. And so a lot of you are probably sitting there wondering, who? I'm the marketing guy. And I appreciate how most of you think about marketing guys like myself. We look like this. We have slick hair. We usually wear a suit and tie, finger guns, basically full of crap. I do not view myself as a marketing guy. I'm the vice president of public relations and marketing, but marketing is just what I do. It is my role in what I have done at Bethesda for now 15 years. I hit my 15-year anniversary this past Monday, actually. Thank you. And so today I thought, in the keeping with the Storytime idea, that I would just tell some stories about how I got here and about some of my time at Bethesda and things that I've worked on and done, and hopefully those will be interesting. I am a gamer at heart. This is the very first computer that I ever owned. It was made before half of the people in this room were probably born. This is called the VIC-20. And my dad got me this because, of course, he thought I was going to use it to do schoolwork, which was a joke. Because what I actually used it for was my brother and I would get our monthly copy of Run magazine, which was filled with all of these little programs. And he and I would grab it and run downstairs and immediately start typing in any game program that they had printed that month. And then we'd spend time going back and debugging it wherever we had typos. And we would play these crummy, crappy little games on the VIC-20, but it was like the greatest thing ever. That little thing in the bottom left, that cassette thing, I had to ask for that peripheral. You had to get a cassette tape just to store stuff on. This thing was so low rent. But that was my gateway into gaming. This is the first console I ever earned, back when having one button on a controller was plenty. And that's the first game I ever stood in line for. I specifically remember making my parents take me down to the store and stood in line out front before it opened to pick up Pac-Man when it originally came out for the Atari 2600. Like you, I have a lot of games that were my first. First game I ever stayed up all night playing unintentionally was Sid Meier's Civilization, the ultimate just one more turn. I almost got tanks on line. There's one more turn, and next thing you know, it's 7 in the morning, and I'm still up. This is the game that made me realize that gaming could be an obsession. I loved XCOM more than I probably should have. It got me in a lot of trouble with my then wife. Yeah. Then being the operative word. And my very first series that I fell in love with and couldn't get enough of was the Gold Box Dungeons and Dragons stuff. I used to name all my characters after guys from The Hobbit or from Lord of the Rings. Aragorn was always my favorite character. Whenever I play a role-playing game, I'm Aragorn in every game I ever play. I'm the quasi-ranger, melee, good guy. So a little bit about how I got here to Bethesda. And to give some perspective, I've had a lot of jobs along the way. I was a stocker in a grocery store for a while. I worked in a welding and safety supply company stocking and packing boxes. I did something called real estate maintenance. If you don't know what that is, imagine getting dropped off in the middle of summer at a building like this with a jug of water, a mower that looked like that, and a can of gas, and being like, good luck, mow the whole thing, and we'll be back at 5 o'clock to pick you up. Or we'd have these real estate companies that would be trying to sell properties, and so we'd show up to something that looked like this, and they'd be like, hey, it's only 110 out, why don't you put on some long sleeves and make it look like this? So I spent a lot of, here's a pro tip for anybody who happens to find themselves in real estate maintenance. If you're ever working on a field like this, and it's filled with poison ivy, be really careful when you go to the bathroom. Yeah, that is not one you want to learn the hard way. I've also had a lot of other jobs. Through college, I had 4 or 5 jobs at a time while I worked. I did everything from radio DJ, I worked in the computer lab for a number of years, troubleshooting stuff and helping people. Back in the day when nobody owned a computer, everybody came to the computer lab. I was an athletic trainer, I was a journalist. I've done a little bit of everything, and I think that in part, was a first insight into something that I have found to be very true over my years at Bethesda, which is that being well-rounded helps. Not just when it comes to marketing, but really in any job. You talk to game developers and they will tell you that programmers who understand art, who understand level design, are significantly better at being programmers. Artists who understand the challenges that programmers are dealing with are significantly better at being artists. And that's something that I think that has served me well, particularly during my journey at Bethesda. How did I get to Bethesda? I went to a small school in North Carolina called Wake Forest, which has some relevance to Australia because this gentleman's name is Alex Kinnell, who happens to be from right here in Australia. He's from Adelaide, is that how you pronounce that? He is a punter for Wake Forest, so there you go, Wake Forest, Australia. We're practically brothers. And I get asked this a lot, so I'm using this opportunity to clear up, and maybe I could stop getting asked this question. I live in the D.C. area. My alma mater's nickname is the Demon Deacons, so that's where D.C. Deacon comes from. It's amazing how many times people don't put those things together, so this is my chance to get people to stop asking me that question. As soon as I graduated, I went to work for a Catholic high school in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which you guys are in Australia. Winston-Salem is in the middle of what's called the Bible Belt, which is all Baptist. So it's all Baptists and me trying to sell a Catholic school in the midst of a lot of Baptists. So I did fundraising. I did recruitment, like getting kids to come to the school. It's a private school. I was the athletic trainer. I coached soccer there. It was a great first job out of school. I then went to work for the American College of Cardiology, which is a professional association that educates cardiologists. They get continuing medical education, which is a requirement for staying certified as a cardiologist. While I did that, I also went to a school just down the street from me in Virginia called George Mason. I got my MBA part-time. And since I didn't have a whole lot to do, as it was, I also started writing for a site called The Adrenaline Vault. I was the second person ever hired at the Adrenaline Vault as a writer. This is back when the internet was becoming a thing. There actually was a time when the internet wasn't just there all the time. And I found out, holy crap, there's sites that talk about gaming. There's sites where you can download demos. I remember I constantly visited a site called Happy Puppy all the time. Yeah, that's the old people right there that actually reacted to Happy Puppy. But I used to grab demos. The concept of being able to grab something and try it was completely foreign to me. But I was like, well, I know how to write, and I love video games, and they gave me a job, which paid nothing. But I didn't care. I loved it. And in between studying for class and doing my regular job, I would write previews and reviews, and I did that for a number of years. I went to my first 2 E3s, through the Adrenaline Vault, the 2 that were in Georgia. Jordan Thomas, who some of you may know, Jordan's worked on some of the BioShock games, slept on my floor one year at E3. He was this little kid from who wore all black and stayed up all night. But he was a really great guy, and he came out and slept on my floor one year. Emil Pagliarulo, who some of you should hopefully know if you play any of our games. He was the lead designer on Fallout 3. He's done a lot of great work on Skyrim and Oblivion. He and I became really good friends during my time at the Adrenaline Vault, and actually I was one of the main guys who recruited him from Looking Glass to come eventually work at Bethesda, where he still works. I went after I graduated, got my MBA. I took a job at the American Association of Blood Banks, which is as fun as it sounds. I immediately realized that was a really bad idea and didn't didn't fit, and had a conversation with some guys at Bethesda who said, hey, why don't you come combine your 2 jobs into one? I was a director of marketing at American Association of Blood Banks. I had done a bunch of PR work at the American College of Cardiology, and they're like, look, you're doing the Adrenaline Vault stuff, you get games, you get marketing, you get PR, you should come run our PR marketing. And this is a very unfortunate logo that we used to have back in the day, which was turned into the even more unfortunate logo that you see before us, which we jokingly called the paragraph for years and years until we finally decided to distill it down into something that is actually legible in less than 10 seconds. And I did literally everything. I was the entire PR and marketing department. So I did PR and marketing, I QA'd things, I wrote game pitches, I wrote game manuals, I did strategy guides and demos and interviews, and yes, probably most important, I was just the meat shield for anything dumb that we did. And that's still the case. That's still my favorite job, is taking abuse from unhappy people. It's really fun. So yeah, I was a one-man band. And this is the depth and breadth of the global reach of Bethesda when I started. There were probably, 15 of us maybe in Rockville, between the dev guys that were there, Todd Howard and his team, the president, myself, one artist, handful of other people. We had a studio in Olympia, Washington that was working on drag racing games, and that was it. This is what we look like now. Holy crap, that's like, you would have never convinced me 15 years ago that this was even remotely possible. But to get to the place now where we have 7 internal studios spread across the world, that we have all of these publishing offices across Europe, across Asia, is pretty remarkable, and it's been an amazing trip, an amazing journey, and it's been great to be able to be a part of that and help sort of guide it and get us there, because one of the great things about being at a small company is we don't have like whole groups of people that just do one thing. Everybody in our company, kind of going back to being well-rounded, you have to be able to pitch in and help out and understand a variety of different things. I want to talk really briefly about this particular office we opened up in Sydney, Australia, not that long ago, which was A, really important for us, and B, really cool. And I don't say this in an ass-kissing way, but Australia has always been a great market for us. I think you guys have gotten the kind of games that we do for years and years and years. We go to events and see all the cool cosplay stuff and how excited Australians get about the game. Our office in Sydney arranged the first ever game demo in the Sydney Opera House. This was back for Rage. This is actually before it was our Sydney office. So Tim Willits came down and was the first guy ever to do a video game thing in the Sydney Opera House. That's pretty cool. This is where our office is. It's in Manly, just outside of Sydney. Simon Alty, who's the head of our office, I regularly give crap because his office is way nicer than anybody else in the world. Like, holy crap, dude, Manly Beach and the thing, look at it, like that's his view every day. I get to look at like a hotel building in I-270 every day, and he gets to look at this. Like, I got screwed. But as part of Australia being important, one of the things I wanted to sidebar into briefly is we just announced this today, which is we're doing a free-to-play game called Battlecry. It's a very cool sort of visceral online action combat game, and we just announced today that we're going to do the beta test here in Australia and New Zealand first, starting early next year. We started taking signups for that today. Thank you. And again, not to kiss butt, but we're doing this in part because we think you guys really get the kind of games that we make. We love the feedback that we get from this territory. I think you guys are really savvy about free-to-play games and what makes them good and how to balance them well. And so we're going to spend a lot of time in this territory specifically going through all of that with you guys and having you help participate in making Battlecry a great game. Tell us what works. Tell us what classes are fun, which aren't. So here at PAX, we have two 8v8 setups over in the booth. Everybody that comes by can pick up a Battlecry pin. We've also got sign-ups for the beta there. If you win your 8v8 competition, we've got some really cool t-shirts that we're giving away. And the Battlecry guys are also giving a panel tomorrow at 2 in the Wombat Theater. And everybody who comes to that not only gets a shirt, but also gets actually, no, not the shirt. They get the exclusive priority access card. So we're giving out some special cards to folks who play the game that is basically a jump to the front of the beta test line. So if you want to not only test it, but be amongst the very first in the world to test it, come by the panel and come by the booth. Okay, so back to Bethesda. One of the cool things about being small is that you get to kind of define, like, who are we? Like, how do we approach making games? How do we think about stuff? Who do we want to be, and how are we different from everybody else? I made up the Bethesda way. It doesn't actually mean anything other than the things that define how we conduct ourselves. I stole this from Todd Howard. He's very fond of talking about, I think it's a great way to put it, a low asshole quotient. And that is because people are a critical part of the process, that things are going to go badly, things are going to go wrong. And when you're working with people that you genuinely like and trust, it is stunning how much easier that stuff is to deal with than you're working with the most talented person in the world who you cannot stand. So that's a very important one. Developer-led and game-focused. Seems simple, like it should always be about the game. That's where you should start. It's amazing how often that is not, in fact, the case. I don't claim to be perfect. I don't think Bethesda is perfect, but I do think that we try and approach things the right way. We come from being a very mom-and-pop shop operation. We had a warehouse downstairs when I first got to Bethesda that was run by Josh, who was a former military guy who had 2 ferrets down there. I just remember Josh and his 2 ferrets. And when they would finish a game like Redguard, they would send off the disk for replication and all the materials, and it would all come back to the office and go downstairs. And the developers would go downstairs, and they would stick CDs in the cardboard trays with manuals. If you played Redguard, anybody play Redguard? Yeah, that reflects the sales roughly right there. They had this cool idea. Elder Scrolls, we love maps, and Redguard isn't part of the series, but it's part of the Elder Scrolls universe. And they had these maps, and they wanted to have like cool burned edges. So they actually took the maps into the warehouse with a torch and just went around and scorched the edges, which it turns out is a horrible idea. Because guess what happens when you take scorched maps and you fold them up and stick them in a box? Yeah, the rest of the ash goes all over the inside of the box, and people open up their game, and it's like opening up the chimney flue, like ash flies everywhere. But like, we come from a very, like, Bethesda was just a developer, and they became a publisher just to publish their own stuff. Like, we were game makers first and foremost, and we sort of grew into the publisher part of it out of the developer part, but it has to be about, like, the devs and the thing they're making, and how do we take that and make it bigger and better. And to that end, we try and talk about the game the way the devs would want us to. And again, this seems like the simplest thing in the world, but it's amazing how often I talk to other developers who talk about the fact that they saw trailers and saw boxes and stuff when the public saw them. Like, they never had any idea what the marketing team was doing, and then they would cringe at it because they were like, well, that's not how I want to talk about it, or that's not what's important or cool about our game. So, I try very hard to make sure we don't make those same kind of mistakes. Marketing, PR, community, it's all the same thing. For me, again, it's just you're talking about what the game is about to a target audience, and doing it in a way that is genuine. Whether it's marketing and you're paying to put a commercial on television, or you're showing a demo to the press, or you're at a thing here like PAX and letting people play the game, it's all just different sides of the same coin. We like to be very consistent all the way across. Avoid the negative is another way of saying just don't do anything stupid. which again seems like a very simple thing. It's amazing how many times people get this wrong and trying to be too cute and too clever and end up doing more harm than good. So we try and make sure that we first don't do anything that where we're getting in the way of our own success, and do what we do. Bethesda is not a company that you ever saw go running after casual games on mobile devices when that became a thing, or Facebook games became the rage. Like, we didn't go running after that either. Like, we're have a pretty good idea of who we are and what we're about. We try and make really cool stuff that's a little bit different than anybody else is doing. And we think if we do it really well, we'll find an audience, whether that's taking a game like Wolfenstein and rebooting it and taking a franchise that, taking a franchise that was, it was a little bloody and battered. People thought about shooters. Wolfenstein was not the first game that came to mind. And we felt like, you know what, there's still something cool about this, and there's something cool about machine games and what they want to do with it, and we think if we stick to our guns and do something really cool, we can make a really good game. And I think Wolfenstein is a great example of us doing that, of us sticking to what we know and not trying to be something we're not. And lastly, we're known for being a little. We like to hold the cards close to the vest. We don't share our financials. We're a privately held company, but we're very careful about, you'll never see anything from me ever. 15 years, you can go look. You've never seen me say anything negative about anybody else. And I have spent perfectly good money on some absolute garbage. And it's not my place to speak badly of other people, of their games or what they make, because I know how hard it is, and I know how much work goes into that. And look, 15 years, like, I've had to ship some turds too. We've made games that that I'm not proud of, and I won't be telling my grandkids about. But we really feel like, stick with what we know. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. All right, so talk a little bit about some things along the way. The first one that came to mind was Morrowind. And for those of you who don't know, Morrowind was joining some pretty exclusive company when it came to console games that were made by Bethesda. That was it, pretty much. That's all we had done. So, hey, look, we doubled our console game library. And it actually wasn't something that was planned for a console originally, but we were talking to Microsoft. It just wasn't technically feasible on the PlayStation, but we were talking to Microsoft about this console they were making. And we're like, you know what? Like, it might actually, from a technical standpoint, work if we do this, that, and the other. So we did. And we did it despite the fact that people thought for sure it was never going to make it. Nobody wants to play a hardcore PC game on a console. The team had grown to this many people, like from our little band of 10 folks. This is the Morrowind team at the height of development. And Todd and I went through and counted. There's 13 of us from this picture that are still at the team all these years, 13 years later, whatever it is, which is pretty cool to hold on to that many folks for that long. But because we were growing, we had to basically go downstairs while they built us a new space into an area that looked not unlike this in the dead winter of DC. And it was so stinking cold. We had to have these little space heaters underneath our desks, literally right underneath our desks. And we had to take turns, because if you turned them all on, the breakers would flip and all the power would go out. So we'd take turns, like Todd Vaughn, who's now our VP of development, and I would take turns, like 10 minutes at a time, and we'd have our hands over the heaters just to warm them up enough so we could put our hands up and type. And we would alternate back and forth. I still maintain that this is my artistic portrayal of what life was like down there. And I'm not saying this was an inspiration for future video games. I'm just saying this was probably an inspiration for future video games. One of my boss calls this the most profitable product Bethesda ever published. This was the strategy guide for Morrowind that was written by a gentleman named Peter Olofsson. But it's really the story of me and my dog. This was my dog, Deacon, He's no longer with us, but he was an awesome dog. Me and Deacon and a place that served pancakes. So we're in the middle of Morrowind, and I'm doing all of the PR and marketing and community and everything there is to do, and we have to get this strategy guide done. And it's being printed by some guys that are all the way down in Richmond, which is about 2 hours south. So the plan that I came up with, this is way before, like, this is sort of old school, like actual getting printed page proofs and stuff. So what I would do is every morning, I would get up and I would drive halfway to Richmond. So this is roughly how far it is. And because we're in Australia, there you go. There's my Melbourne equivalent of what my drive was like every day. Except traffic on 95 South headed to Richmond looks like this. It is one of the 5 worst commutes in the United States of America. So every morning, I would get up with my dog and drive to a Cracker Barrel, which is known for its pancakes, down in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I would drop off page proofs that we had worked on the night before. So I'd be at work until about 3 o'clock in the morning. Me and the dog would go home. We get about 4 hours sleep. We go sit in traffic. The dog dead asleep in the back. We'd pick up page proofs. We'd go back to work. We'd work on them all day, taking screenshots and editing and making fixes and making corrections, and then drive back down. And 4 hours sleep. My dog spent 3 weeks with me, I think, in the office, just because like I was never home. And I have really fond memories of me and that dog grinding it out and getting this strategy guide done. And for me, it really just speaks to, like, that wasn't what I was hired to do, but it was work that had to get done. And we were a small team, and it was like, look, we need anybody to pitch in and do anything they can to help make this a success and help us do what we need to. So, like, who's going to write the manual? Todd was like, Pete, you write the manual. Like, okay, like, why not? I'm not doing anything else. I got time from 2:45 to 3 in the morning. So for me, it really kind of highlights these, like, pitch in, help out, do whatever you can. Oblivion obviously was another big step for us in terms of bringing the game to the next gen consoles. Oblivion taught me a lot about ratings. And ratings in terms of everybody, there's ratings here in Australia, which I'm very pleased now they have an 18 plus. They treat all of you like grown-ups now and not treat games like a toy. But back then they did not. It was only MA 15 plus, which is different than PEGI 16, which is different than the ESRB teen, and all of these different ratings agencies all over the world. Some of them know likey the boobies, and they get very upset at anything having to do with nudity. Some of them don't like the blood and the combat, and some of them don't like the drug references. God forbid we get the youth of Australia hooked on skooma. So it was a really interesting challenge going through with all of these different ratings agencies and just trying to sort of talk them through the game and the context. I had an actual conversation with another adult human being at a ratings agency where they were like, well, we found this severed head in the game, and it's kind of really gross and disturbing, and like we hadn't seen this before. And I was like, yeah, but I sent you a picture of a severed head, and mine had a big gash through the middle of it. Like, my severed head is way worse than the severed head that you... Like, that's a real conversation I had with somebody. Like, the severed head picture I sent you is way worse than the one you sent me. Like, what? And eventually we got through it. The big wrinkle for us was in the United States right before E3. The ESRB in the United States decided to re-rate the game and re-rate it from teen to M, which is an experience I hope I will never have to go through again, and having product all over the country that you have to re-sticker and pull off shelves and do all of this stuff. Like, but it did highlight the importance of this ratings process and the differences culturally. One of my favorite Oblivion stories is the Washington Post, which is a big, not only national, but recognized on a global scale, was going to do a cover story on us, local company making this big game. Everybody's excited. They came and visit. They took a bunch of pictures. And I like to tell this story from Todd's perspective. He said, I wake up in the morning, and I walk downstairs, and my wife is in the kitchen, and she throws the paper at me and says, way to go, dumbass. because the picture on the front page of the Washington Post was that. And as Todd says it, he's like, oh my God, Pete's gonna kill me. Like, we did all this work to get this cover story, and now there's goofy pictures on the front. And he said, it took me a while, but I finally called you to be like, just fall on my sword. And he said, I called you, and he said, before I can even get through my first sentence of the apology, you were like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm gonna have so much fun with this. Like, I'm doing a Photoshop contest with this, and Photoshop Todd's head onto something, and the winner gets a strategy guide. And we did. I did a contest immediately. Take Todd's head and Photoshop onto something awesome, and I gave out prizes. And as a result, that picture was actually the most downloaded popular picture on the Washington Post website for a week, much to the chagrin of his mother and his wife, I'm sure. Can't talk about Oblivion. See? Do I even need to explain this to you guys? You all get the joke. So we decided that horses were really cool and important, and maybe we should give people a way to protect them so that they wouldn't die. Seemed like a pretty reasonable idea at the time. It turns out we became the poster children for the apocalypse that DLC was going to be about. And people forget, we did all this other cool stuff. Don't forget all the other cool stuff. We did a thing called spell tomes, which all it does is add spells that you could learn into treasure you might find. You didn't actually get anything. You just got a random chance, and nobody cared about that. They were like, oh, that's fine. 99 cents for maybe getting something, that was fine. The Shivering Isles, we were the first guys ever to do a full expansion on a console. Nobody cared about that either. They played it, but they focused on the horse armor thing. And at the time, we were guessing, because we were the first ones. Nobody had done anything, so we were looking at themes. What do people play for a theme? Well, if you're paying $2-3 for some stupid wallpaper on your Xbox, well, why wouldn't you pay $2-3 for horse armor? My bad. But the plus side is, because we're very funny and we can be self-effacing, this led to the greatest April Fool's joke of all time. And the April Fool's joke was that all Oblivion DLC was going to be half price, except for horse armor. So there's two great follow-ups to this story. One is, nobody was sure if we were kidding or not. So everybody went to look. But the best part is, all the press guys had to email us to find out, because they couldn't figure out the price on Xbox.com because they had all bought it, and so the price didn't show up. So all the people who told us this is stupid had gone out and bought it and then couldn't tell. So yes, we were like, yes, we're not kidding. It's all half price except horse armor, which was, $5 or $6 or whatever it was. And the non-horse armor sales predictably shot up. They doubled, which okay, you cut stuff half price. Basic economics. Price goes down, sales go up. Guess what happened with the horse armor, guys? So we actually then felt guilty about our, no, the whole joke was that it was twice and nobody's supposed to buy it. Wait, why are you paying twice as much? It's consumers. Okay. This is a short story about Star Trek Legacy, which is a game that we did a little while later. Which featured all of the different captains from throughout the Star Trek series, including the handsome and talented James T. Kirk. And he called me one day over Thanksgiving, which is a big thing in the States, over Thanksgiving holiday. He had been doing some interview stuff for us. because we were like, well, we're going to pay you to do the voice work in the game, but then we also want to, get you to do a few interviews for us for some mainstream folks, and we'll give you some extra money for your time. And so Mr. Shatner called me at home on my cell phone. Much to my surprise, I was like, wait, who? What? I had a very nice conversation. He was led to believe we were sort of holding back money we were supposed to send him, and we talked it through and figured it out. But the guys at work thought this was, I got back to work after Thanksgiving. They thought it was hilarious. Like, oh my God, William Shatner called and yelled at Pete over Thanksgiving. That's hilarious. This gentleman's name is Wes Johnson. We've known Wes for a very long time. Wes has done a lot of voice work for us. He's also known in the Washington, D.C. area. He is the voice of the Washington Capitals, the local professional hockey team. If you played our games, you might know him from things like Oblivion, where he was the voice of the announcer in the arena. Okay, very talented voice actor guy. Wes and our sound producer at Bethesda Game Studios thought it would be hilarious if Wes called as William Shatner on my cell phone a couple of days later, which he did. While I was picking my kids up from daycare, and I have them on the car speakerphone, Wes called me, and I obviously don't have the original recording, but as I was talking about this, they were like, oh, you should totally get Wes to call and do his William Shatner. So this is Wes Johnson as William Shatner calling me.
Pete Hines. This is Bill Shatner. Listen, I'm in D.C. for the Washington Auto Show, and I wanted to come out to Bethesda and pick up a check, for the work I've been doing for you on Star Trek. I need to be paid. Kirk out.
So I actually, having been yelled at by the real William Shatner a few days before, my crap detector went off fairly early on this, and I think it was when Wes in the real phone call dropped the F-bomb, and I was like, hey, wait, I have my kids in the car, and they're listening to this. They copped to it. But funny moment. Okay, Fallout 3. If you ask me about sort of things that I've done and I'm most proud of, this has to be pretty high up on the list because we had just done Oblivion. We picked up this IP that was beloved. Fallout and Fallout 2, rightfully so, are listed amongst the greatest games, the greatest PC games of all time. And they were sitting there languishing, and we thought, the hell with it. Like, we could do this. We could make a pretty awesome game. Of course, we took a lot of flack because everybody said, it's just going to be Oblivion with guns. And at first, we felt like we had to sort of like swim against that. Like, no, we're going to, we get Fallout and we understand why it's different. But at the end of the day, we actually ended up just deciding, you know what, we're going to embrace it and just say, yes, it's going to be Oblivion with guns in all the best ways possible. It's going to be about open world and exploring, and we felt like we were folks that could get what the Fallout franchise is all about. This is a cake that I had made. We did a press event, and I was like, I want to do a bloody mess cake because I just think that would be hilarious. So we got this really well-known cake maker in Baltimore to make an actual cake, actual edible cake, out of the bloody mess perk. The best part of this is the next morning after the press event, Todd is helping me load this into the car, and we get into the elevator, and we're carrying this thing down, two of us, and we stop on a floor, and this lovely 70-year-old elderly couple steps onto the elevator, and I wish I had a picture of their faces the moment they stepped onto the elevator and saw these two young men holding this horrific cake, trying to figure out what in the hell is going on. It was great. This is the first time we ever attended PAX, PAX Prime, and we went a little nuts. Folks were kind of doing their booths, but we did this whole two-sided booth thing where we had one side of it was all clean and pristine, and you had the family, and it's all happy. We had this tricked out custom Airstream, and on the inside of it, we tricked it out. We put a big plasma TV, but we trimmed it, and we would allow folks come in to play the game. We had a little fridge you see down there, and we had Nuka-Cola made, and folks could come in and have a Nuka-Cola and sit in the trailer, play the game. We really felt like PAX was the perfect audience for us to kind of connect with this kind of thing. And then the other side of the booth was all burned and bombed out, and like the sign is all destroyed, and half the lights don't work. All the mannequins are burnt up. But it was a great way for us to sort of start to appreciate what a PAX audience is like and how it's different, and how things that you might do at other shows don't really work for PAX, or how you can push things a little bit, and folks like yourselves will really get it and get what we're trying to do. We had worked with Jerry and Mike on a comic. I had pitched them on this a while before we started, and I was like, I really want you guys to do like a Fallout comic. And they're like, well, what do you want it to be about? Like what? And I was like, I don't care. Like, you guys just figure it out. Like, do whatever you want. Like, you have open license, make up your own thing. And they came up with this brilliant story of Vault 77, which is one man and a crate of puppets. And they did this great series of strips telling the whole story of this guy's adventure. And we dovetailed that into creating the actual puppets for PAX that we handed out to folks. I have a signed version of this poster by Jerry and Mike hanging above my desk. It's one of my prized possessions. We did other stuff, like we did a Viewmaster. Is anybody in here old enough to remember Viewmaster? Okay. So we did a Viewmaster. It's just a Viewmaster with screenshots, but from Fallout 3. But we called it the SimTech 1000. It was like, this is like the first wave of new technology. That was where the Fault Dweller Survival Guide came from. And it ended up just being an amazing show for us, and really kind of took Fallout 3 to a wider audience because of the folks at PAX, because we could do things like puppets, and people would get it and embrace it and think, oh my God, I will do anything to get my hands on a Viewmaster, which is not a thing you usually hear at game shows. Yeah, turned out great. It would be difficult for me to talk about Bethesda without talking about a little game we did called Skyrim. The two things I take away from Skyrim were, number one, much like with Morrowind way back when we did it for the Xbox, and everybody told us, like, there's no way people are going to get this like PC kind of role-playing game on a console. Console players aren't savvy enough to get that. Like, they like shooters, they like action games, they like platformers. They're never going to get it, and we proved them wrong. With Skyrim, we announced a release date. Todd loved this idea of 11/11/11 as a release date, and everybody else told us, you're nuts. Like, there's no way you can go against Call of Duty. A role-playing game in that kind of window, you're going to get killed by all these established franchises, and you have, it's going to end up hurting your sales a lot. And over 20 million copies later, they can all bite me. By the way, these are the same experts who say you can't do single-player games, like that. That you have to have multiplayer. All these really astute nuggets of wisdom. Probably the favorite part of the Skyrim campaign that we did is we have this beautiful game. It looks amazing, but we wanted to try and do something different for a TV commercial at launch. And we landed on this idea of doing something that was live action, which we had never really tried before, not like this anyway. And it was a bit scary. It was a bit risky. We went over to Prague and filmed this with a shop we had never worked before, and it was mostly live action with a little bit of CG. But I'm most proud of it because we were able to find a way that allowed people to connect with the game and what it was about without using in the game in a way that still stuck true to the things I talked about before, which is, it was a piece that sort of portrayed the game the way the developers would want, and it was true to what the experience was about. I just love this idea of like, I want to be the guy who's walking in when everybody else is running out, and this is the piece that we did.
Rated M for mature.
Makes me want to go play Skyrim right now. The last game I thought I would touch on briefly was a game called Dishonored. And this is a bit unique for a couple of reasons, because, I mentioned before machine games and working on Wolfenstein, but that was a little different because you're talking about guys that have worked together, but they were at a previous studio, and so they were all sort of coming together and bringing in new folks and sort of figuring things out for the first time. Arcane, on the other hand, has been around for a while, and they had a lot of experience making games, but hadn't really ever gotten the chance to be untethered, to be able to come up with something that they really wanted to make and then take it all the way. And that's what Dishonored was. Dishonored is actually started many years ago, back when we were sitting in the freezing cold basement by the loading doors. Todd Vaughn, our VP of development, wrote a treatment for a game called Dishonored many years ago, and it just sort of sat there for years and years and years. And as we were talking to Rolf and Harvey about what they wanted to make, Todd mentioned this to them and had them take a look at it, and they really liked it. They took it and changed a bunch of stuff, the setting and so forth, but they loved the idea at its core of this game design that Todd Vaughn had wrote, and sort of took it and made it their own. And as I was getting ready for this presentation, I emailed a bunch of folks to be like, hey, I need to tell some stories, and for all the different studios and people I work with, what would you have me talk about for stuff that we've done together? And Harvey Smith sent me a really nice email, and I thought some of what he included was so good that rather than try and re-say it, I would just use what he said. And he talks about a time on Dishonored when nobody, and he's talking about both internally and externally, quite got what the game and the world were about, and the process for trying to get everybody to wrap their heads around it. And moments when we, Bethesda Marketing, had faith in them, and we really try and be very close partners throughout the process. We sit in with these guys when they're first concepting the game, just to talk up to them about their ideas and serve as a sounding board. Again, we're gamers. We're gamers that happen to do marketing or PR or community. And we think we have a pretty good idea on how to help them communicate that message more widely, which is what Harvey went on to say. We helped them not only reach the point where people kind of got what the game was about, but then helping them and craft the messaging into something people can get excited about, which is often missed. I mean, you all have played games that were excellent, and you can't figure out why nobody else is playing them. And sometimes it's something as simple as people just don't know how to wrap their heads around what this thing is that you're making. Harvey goes on to talk about that, this idea of creative chemistry, where people like each other, they trust each other, they're aligned in terms of goals, and have spent enough time that they know how to interact with one another. And I think there's some key parts of this that I really gravitate towards, which is going back to some things I alluded to earlier, which is the people part of this. That people who like each other, people who are aligned in terms of how they think and how they approach a project, what is a good idea and what's not a good idea, how to interact with folks in a way that is healthy and productive, is not easy and is not a given. And if you're able to figure those things out, it's amazing what it does to a project and what you're able to do with it and where you're able to take it. I think Dishonored is a great example, not just because these guys ultimately landed on a game that was excellent and won a lot of awards, as it well should have, but there was a time along the way where we were playing builds and providing feedback and saying, guys, look, I know what you're going for here, but this is too hard. Like, it's too difficult, or this idea that you have, like, people are going to miss it. They're not going to understand this part or that part. And it's not just that we recognized what parts of the game needed help, but it was people like Harvey and Roth and their team and their willingness to listen to that feedback and not take it as an attack or you don't know what you're talking about, but to really embrace it and say, okay, this is good. Like, we want to get better. And they went back and they changed all of these things about the game to make it better. Not big things, not, now he's got a flamethrower instead of a sword, but things that were still true to the game, but addressed the kind of feedback they were getting. Which sort of leads me into my concluding stuff, which is, what have I learned in 15 years? Well, I continue to believe that making games is about people. It is not about technology. It is not about the platform. Technology is always changing. Consoles are always evolving. But what doesn't change is the people that you're working with to make games for those platforms. Obviously, if you're lucky enough to be and I say lucky loosely, but if you're a one-man studio making some indie project and doing everything yourself, okay, well, maybe this doesn't apply to you. But for the vast majority of people who are having to collaborate and work together, this is crucially important. Your ability to not just be a good artist or a programmer or a marketing person or whatever, but to interact with other people and to do it in a way that's positive. And it is those people that are ultimately going to be what determines your success or failure. And the people that I've had a chance to work with, the people that I spend time with every day at Bethesda, they are my family. It's a place that I love to work, and a big reason why I still come back is the people. Bethesda is just a name. It's a name for a group of people. The name on the building doesn't mean anything. It's the people who are there and the work that they do and how they pull together and how they talk to each other and treat each other that ultimately determines how we're successful. The second one is making games is hard. It is. Like, this is a highly competitive business. And anytime I tell somebody what it is that I do, the natural assumption is like, well, I sit around and play games all day. Which, I wish. But the truth of the matter is there's a ton of work to get all of the things to go right and to pull in the same direction. We did a documentary for Oblivion where we had guys in the office while we were working on it. And we did a version of this that never saw the light of day. It was called the Morrowind Babies. It never saw the light of day because there was a lot of stuff that was a little bit too much behind the curtain and a little bit too much like, those guys don't really know what they're doing. So we changed it, and the version you got with your Oblivion Collector's Edition has some of it, but I showed this to a couple of my colleagues who hadn't seen it, and I said, well, if there was something from this kind of the lost footage, tell me what you would pull out. And they all really liked this clip. So this is Todd and I. We're a couple of weeks from E3 where we're going to show Oblivion off to everybody, and we've just seen an updated version of the demo with the team that, I'll let us explain.
You want to
I do. I just want to pick your name. Yeah. Although I don't really have any.
Well, you weren't here last week. It was a disaster last week.
So it was less disaster this week.
Imagine this week, but it was uglier and it crashed every minute. I gotta keep it cool in front of the other guys in the meeting. Let's focus on what we need to do. But hey, this is a bunch of suck.
just keep envisioning people seeing the trailer like, wow, that looks really sweet. Like, can't wait to see that. And then they come in. Did I walk in the wrong room? What game is this you're showing?
Hey, remember in the trailer when it crashed? How come you didn't record that? That was cool. What do we sell sheet? Look at did that, and then do that, and do that.
Call about your phone for your...
I did.
I'm done with you. Peace. I look so young in that video. It makes me sad. And the last thing is that making games is ultimately supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun, you're probably not doing it right. That it is a lot of hard work, but you have to remember to have fun along the way. Every year, we do a kind of unique thing at Bethesda. We get all of our studios together, and we do a big showcase where all of the studios talk about what it is they're making, whether it's announced or not. And everybody in the company gets to see it. And alongside of that, we also do a company video with skits and stuff. And my department had the idea to do a skit. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Glenn Ross, but Alec Baldwin has this epic meltdown talk with the sales team that they asked me if I would, that we could riff off of, and we made this video, which I thought you might enjoy.
You know what's cool? Selling 10 million copies.
You know what's even cooler? 10 billion.
Oh, yeah.
The Bethesda marketing team could sell anything. Well, almost anything.
Well, this is the game.
Let's talk about something important, folks. Put that donut down. Donuts are for closers.
What's your handle?
You, that's my handle.
We can't show these on the floor. We'd be better off with swastikas.
I can go out there and sell 15 million copies tonight in 2 hours.
We have 0 fans of this game.
Everything is riding on this show.
Dick in a jam.
Cancel it now!
It's too late.
Get mad, you sons of bitches, get mad.
What happens when the unsellable
You know what it takes to sell a game?
has a ship date? Coming hopefully never. Directed by Pete Hines.
And so lastly, now what? My belief is that while it is hard, it's not complicated. And every time we do a game with a studio, my thought is, well, let's just do that again, only better. And I don't mean like, well, that exact same game, only better. I mean the process of making a game. Going through and figuring out how to get better at the things that we did okay, things not to do, mistakes not to repeat. But it's not rocket science that you can, you grow off of the thing that you did last time and try and figure out new ways to interact with the community, new things we can try, like the live action thing we showed for Skyrim. And again, stick true to all those things I talked about as far as the kind of people that you work with, the approach that you take, being true to the game, be who we are. We know who we are at Bethesda. We aren't going to go running off after the latest trend. We are going to talk to our studios about the kinds of things that they want to do, the kinds of things that they're interested in, and the kind of games that we think you guys are going to play. I have always believed that if our developers are really excited and passionate about what they want to do, they only got to worry about selling one copy. Just sell me. Sell me on why it is you want to make the game, and I'll take care of selling all the other copies. But you make the thing that you're most excited about that's going to get you out of bed every day and make you excited to go to work and make something great, and we'll take care of the rest. Again, at the end of the day, it is always going to be about the people. It is about the people that I have the privilege to work with every day, to create these great experiences. I'm thankful every day that I get a chance to work alongside some of the best and brightest people in the business, and that we get to make great games for folks like yourself. So that's all my time. Thank you guys so much for stopping by to see me. Again, it's a privilege to be here at PAX. I hope all of you have a great show. I hope you make some time to come by and see us at the Battlecry booth or at some of the panels that they're doing or that I'm doing. And we'll see you then. Thank you.